Welcome to Cold Outside, where history's mysteries are served with a twist. In today's episode, we delve into a legal quirk that's as perplexing as it is true: the IRS requirement to declare income from illegal activities. Picture the roaring 20s, jazz, flappers, prohibition, and the rise of organized crime. From this backdrop emerges a rule that's still in effect today. Dubbed the Al Capone Rule, it presents a fascinating interplay between law enforcement and the underworld. Why is it named after one of history's most notorious gangsters, and what implications does it hold for the modern-day individual with hidden secrets? Join us as we unravel this complex spaghetti of legal conundrums and criminal intrigue. Our tale begins in the bustling, crowded streets of Brooklyn in the early 1900s. Here in the melting pot of New York, a young Alphonse Capone starts his journey from obscurity to infamy. Initially a member of the Notorious 5 Points gang, Capone's ambition and ruthlessness soon catapulted him to the forefront of Chicago's criminal underworld. The 1920s were a time of stark contrasts in America. While the Jazz Age was in full swing, bringing with it a cultural renaissance, the nation was also grappling with the consequences of the Volstead Act, which ushered in the era of Prohibition. This period was a boon for organized crime, and Capone, with his keen business acumen and ruthless tactics, quickly monopolized Chicago's illegal liquor trade. His operations expanded beyond speakeasies. Gambling dens, prostitution rings, and a vast network of bribery and corruption formed the sinews of his empire. To the common folk, Capone was a figure of intrigue, a modern-day Robin Hood who defied an unpopular law. Yet to the authorities, he was public enemy number one. But Capone's success was not just due to his criminal genius, it was also a product of the times. The Prohibition era was marked by widespread corruption and a public ambivalence about the legality of alcohol. This public sentiment allowed Capone to cultivate a Robin Hood-like image, as he often distributed part of his wealth among the needy. However, his brutal methods of maintaining control, from violent enforcement to rigging elections, showed a darker side to his operations. As Capone's empire grew, so did his notoriety. Newspapers of the era were filled with tales of his exploits and the law's inability to pin him down. Despite numerous attempts by law enforcement, Capone seemed untouchable, shielded by a combination of public adoration, fear, and an intricate web of corruption that infiltrated all levels of Chicago's infrastructure. In this world of glitz and danger, Capone reigned supreme. But as he would soon find out, no empire is impervious to downfall. In the shadows, a new challenger was emerging, one that operated not with guns and muscle, but with ledgers and laws. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change the face of criminal justice in America. In the heart of Chicago, amidst the jazz clubs and the bustling speakeasies, Al Capone reigned like a king in a kingdom of shadows. His influence was far-reaching, his power almost mythical. The law enforcement agencies, despite their best efforts, seemed like mere pawns in a game dominated by Capone. He was more than a criminal, he was an enigma, a man who could orchestrate the city's underworld without leaving a trace. Capone's empire was built on a foundation of fear and loyalty. Witnesses who dared to speak against him found themselves silenced, either by intimidation or more permanent means. Evidence mysteriously disappeared, and those who pursued him were often met with dead ends. Capone's network extended deep into the city's fabric, involving not just criminals but also key figures in politics and law enforcement. This intricate web of corruption made his operations virtually untouchable by conventional law enforcement methods. But Capone's greatest strength was his understanding of public perception. He maintained a charismatic persona, often seen at charity events and public gatherings, presenting himself as a benefactor to the needy. This public image was carefully crafted to mask his criminal activities, making him a figure of admiration and, to some, a folk hero. Despite his public persona, Capone's rule was marked by brutal violence. The infamous St. Valentine's Day massacre of 1929, where 7 members of a rival gang were brutally gunned down, was a stark reminder of the lengths to which Capone would go to maintain control. Yet, even this act of violence, which shocked the nation, didn't lead to his downfall. The law seemed powerless against him, and his grip on Chicago remained unchallenged. However, unbeknownst to Capone, a different kind of threat was taking shape. A threat not armed with guns or bound by the street code, but one that wielded the power of the pen and ledger. The federal government, frustrated by their inability to convict Capone through conventional means, began exploring alternative strategies. It was in the quiet, meticulous offices of the Internal Revenue Service that a plan began to take shape. A plan that would use Capone's own financial success against him. The IRS at the time was not the formidable agency it is today. Its role in law enforcement was limited, and the idea of using tax laws to target criminals was revolutionary. The government had to tread carefully, as this approach was untested and Capone's financial dealings were a complex web to unravel. As the IRS began its painstaking investigation, poring over records and tracking the flow of money, a new chapter in the fight against organized crime was being written. The stage was set for a historic confrontation, a battle that would not be fought with bullets, but with bank statements and tax returns. The untouchable Al Capone was about to meet his match, not in the shadowy alleyways of Chicago, but in the stark light of a courtroom. While Al Capone basked in his untouchable status, a different kind of force was aligning against him. This new adversary didn't lurk in the alleys or wield Tommy guns. It operated from the mundane offices of the Internal Revenue Service. The IRS, an agency more associated with accountants and paperwork than with gangsters and crime bosses, was about to change the rules of engagement. In the late 1920s, the IRS was undergoing a transformation. The introduction of the 16th Amendment in 1913 had laid the foundation for the modern income tax system, but its enforcement mechanisms were still evolving. The agency's role in criminal investigations, particularly regarding tax evasion, was a relatively new and unexplored territory. The IRS's strategy against Capone was spearheaded by Frank J. Wilson, a brilliant forensic accountant. Wilson and his team faced a daunting task. Capone's financial affairs were a tangled web, with money flowing through various channels, laundered through legitimate businesses and hidden behind layers of associates and frontmen. The key to the IRS's strategy was tracing the money back to Capone. This involved painstaking detective work, tracking down ledgers, receipts, and financial records, many of which were deliberately obscured or destroyed. The IRS agents had to navigate a labyrinth of false names, coded transactions, and secretive banking practices. It was a game of cat and mouse, with Capone's financial wizards constantly trying to stay one step ahead of the law. But the IRS was persistent. They slowly unraveled the complex financial empire that Capone had built. One breakthrough came from an unexpected source, a ledger seized during a raid on one of Capone's gambling dens. This ledger contained detailed records of Capone's financial transactions, including large sums of money that clearly pointed towards significant untaxed income. As the IRS built its case, the notion of prosecuting a notorious gangster for tax evasion seemed almost anticlimactic. Yet this strategy was ingenious in its simplicity and legality. It bypassed the need for direct evidence of Capone's myriad crimes, focusing instead on the one thing that was indisputable: his income. The stage was set for a historic trial. The IRS had armed themselves not with guns, but with evidence of unpaid taxes. It was an unprecedented move, one that would test the limits of the legal system and challenge the notion of what it meant to be untouchable. The government was poised to take down one of the most notorious criminals in American history, not for murder, bootlegging, or racketeering, but for evading taxes. In this battle of ledgers and laws, Capone's empire of crime was about to face its most formidable opponent yet. The trial of Al Capone, which began in 1931, was unlike any that had come before. It was not just a legal battle, it was a cultural moment, a clash between the untamed world of organized crime and the methodical machinery of the law. The courtroom was not just a place of judgment, it became a stage where the drama of the era played out in full view. As the trial commenced, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Capone, ever the showman, appeared confident, perhaps believing his financial web was too intricate to be unraveled. The prosecution, led by George E.Q. Johnson, was armed with an arsenal of documents meticulously gathered by Frank J. Wilson and his team. The evidence was not sensational. There were no blood-stained clothes or smoking guns, but it was damning in its detail. The trial revealed the depth of Capone's empire. Ledgers and financial records laid bare a vast network of income streams, from gambling dens to speakeasies. What became clear was that Capone had amassed a fortune, and yet, according to the IRS, not a cent had been paid in taxes. Capone's defense was a mix of denial and technicality. His lawyers argued that the government had no direct evidence linking Capone to the income in question, suggesting that he was being targeted unjustly. They painted Capone as a victim of a vindictive government, a narrative that resonated with his public image as a modern-day Robin Hood. However, the evidence was overwhelming. The ledger seized in the gambling den raid, now referred to as the smoking gun, became a central piece of evidence. It detailed vast sums of money and was a direct link to Capone. The prosecution meticulously pieced together Capone's financial dealings, painting a picture of a man who had accrued wealth through illegal means and had willfully evaded taxes. The verdict, when it came, was groundbreaking. Capone was found guilty of tax evasion. He was sentenced to 11 years in prison, fined $50,000, and charged for court costs. The untouchable gangster, who had evaded conviction for murder, bootlegging, and a host of other crimes, was finally brought down by his failure to pay taxes. The conviction of Al Capone on tax evasion charges was more than just a legal victory. It was a symbolic moment. It signaled the end of an era where organized crime figures seemed beyond the reach of the law. The trial demonstrated that even the most powerful and elusive criminals could be held accountable, not necessarily for their most notorious crimes, but for the simple act of evading taxes. This legal strategy, which had successfully toppled one of the most notorious criminals in American history, became known as the Al Capone Rule. It was a stark reminder to all that no matter how clever or untouchable one might seem, the taxman cannot be evaded. The rule also represented a shift in legal tactics, a recognition that financial crimes could be just as effective as traditional methods in bringing down criminal empires. The Al Capone Rule would go on to have far-reaching implications, not just in the world of law enforcement, but in the broader cultural narrative. It became a symbol of the government's commitment to uphold the law, a testament to the power of perseverance and the importance of financial accountability. The legacy of Capone's downfall continues to resonate, a reminder that in the world of crime and punishment, sometimes the pen is mightier than the sword. The ripples of the Al Capone trial spread far beyond the confines of 1930s Chicago. The precedent set in that courtroom reshaped the approach to fighting organized crime and white-collar criminals alike. Today, the legacy of the Al Capone Rule still influences legal tactics and strategies. In modern times, the IRS's mandate to report all income, legal or illegal, remains a powerful tool in the government's arsenal. This rule has been used to target a wide range of criminal activities, from drug trafficking to political corruption. The rationale is straightforward. While proving complex criminal operations can be daunting, demonstrating tax evasion is often more direct and objective. One notable application of the Al Capone Rule in recent decades was during the crackdown on major drug cartels. In these cases, the leaders of these organizations amassed vast wealth through illegal drug sales. However, just like Capone, their downfall often came not from drug charges, but from failing to declare and pay taxes on their ill-gotten gains. These cases highlighted the effectiveness of attacking the financial underpinnings of criminal enterprises. The rule has also been a factor in cases of political corruption. Politicians and public officials engaged in bribery or embezzlement have found themselves facing not just charges of corruption, but also tax evasion. This dual approach has proven effective in ensuring ensuring accountability, regardless of the individual's status or power. Moreover, the Al Capone rule has implications for the average person as well. It's a stark reminder that no matter the source of income, the obligation to report it to the IRS is clear. This aspect of the law introduces a complex moral and legal dilemma. If one acquires money through illegal means, reporting it could incriminate oneself, but failing to report it is, in itself, a crime. The ongoing relevance of the Al Capone rule in various facets of law enforcement and public policy is a testament to its impact. It's a strategy born out of necessity, a creative solution to the age-old problem of how to bring the untouchable to justice. In the endless battle against crime, the rule remains a potent reminder that sometimes the most effective weapon is found not in a gun holster, but in a tax code. Let's shift our focus from the past to the present and consider some real-life implications of the Al Capone rule. Imagine you're an average person who, through a twist of fate, finds yourself with income from illegal sources. The law is unequivocal. All income must be reported to the IRS, regardless of its legality. But what does this mean for you, standing at the crossroads of legality and survival? Scenario 1. A finder of lost treasures. Suppose you stumble upon a cache of valuable items that, unbeknownst to you, were obtained through criminal means. The law requires you to report this newfound wealth, but in doing so, you risk drawing attention to the illegal origins of these treasures and possibly implicating yourself in a crime you didn't commit. Scenario 2. A gambler in the underground. Picture yourself as a skilled player in illegal gambling dens, amassing significant winnings. Reporting these earnings to the IRS might paint a target on your back, marking you as an associate of illegal gambling rings. On the other hand, not reporting could lead to charges of tax evasion. These scenarios underscore the complex web woven by the Al Capone rule. It places individuals in a precarious position, forcing them to navigate a moral and legal labyrinth. The law, in its black and white letter, doesn't account for the shades of gray encountered in such situations. It leaves those entangled in its web to wrestle with questions of ethics, self-preservation, and legality. The Al Capone rule, while straightforward in its wording, presents a conundrum that resonates with anyone who finds themselves on the fringes of legality. It's a reminder that the world of crime and punishment is not always clear-cut, and that sometimes the simplest laws can create the most complex dilemmas. As we reach the end of our journey through the tangled tale of Al Capone and the rule that bears his name, we're left with more questions than answers. The Al Capone rule, a simple clause in the tax code, reveals the complexities and paradoxes of law and morality. It challenges us to consider the fine line between right and wrong, legal and illegal. In the shadowy realms of crime and justice, the choices are rarely clear-cut. What would you do if faced with such a dilemma? Would you follow the letter of the law or tread a different path? This is the puzzle we leave you to ponder. Thank you for joining us on Cold Outside, where we unravel the mysteries of past and present history and law. Today's story reminds us that every tale has its twists, every rule its reasons. Stay curious, keep questioning, and never stop exploring the layers of the world around you.